There are stories in Hollywood that shine, and then there are stories that burn, stories forged through rejection, failure, doubt, and an unbreakable will to rise again. And the journey of Ben Affleck is not just a tale of fame, but a powerful reminder that success is never a straight line but a storm you must learn to survive. Because long before the red carpets, the Oscars, and the global recognition, there was a young boy in Cambridge, Massachusetts, chasing something he couldn't yet define but deeply felt inside him, a hunger to become more than his circumstances, a desire to tell stories that would echo across generations. And like many dreamers, he started small, appearing in minor roles, commercials, and TV shows, learning the craft piece by piece, rejection by rejection, until one friendship changed everything. A bond with Matt Damon that would not only shape his life but redefine Hollywood storytelling, because together they didn't just dream, they wrote, they struggled, they doubted, and they kept going until they created Good Will Hunting. A screenplay born from passion, pain, and persistence. A story that studios initially overlooked, underestimated, and almost ignored. But when it finally reached the world, it didn't just succeed, it exploded, earning them an Academy Award, and proving that raw talent combined with relentless determination can break through even the toughest walls. Yet what makes Ben Affleck's story truly inspiring is not the success that followed, but the struggles that came after. Because fame is a double-edged sword, and while the world saw a rising star, behind the scenes there were battles, career missteps, public criticism, personal struggles, and moments where everything seemed to fall apart, where every decision was questioned, every failure magnified, and every flaw exposed to millions. And this is where most people break, where dreams quietly die under the weight of expectations. But not him, because instead of running from failure, he walked straight into it, learned from it, and rebuilt himself piece by piece, proving that resilience is not about never falling, but about rising every single time you do. And when Hollywood started to doubt him, when critics labeled his career as fading, he made a bold move, stepping behind the camera, taking control of his narrative, and directing films that would not only revive his career, but redefine him as a storyteller. With Gone Baby Gone, The Town, and the Oscar-winning Argo, he didn't just come back, he dominated, showing the world that reinvention is the ultimate power move, that you are never stuck in one version of yourself unless you choose to be. And perhaps one of the most iconic chapters of his journey came when he stepped into the role of Batman, a character larger than life, surrounded by immense expectations and criticism even before his first scene was released. But once again, he embraced the challenge, delivering a performance that divided opinions but proved one undeniable truth: that courage is not about being universally accepted, but about standing firm in who you are despite the noise. And beyond the films, beyond the awards, beyond the fame, what truly defines Ben Affleck is his humanity. His openness about struggles with addiction, his honesty about mental health, his willingness to show the world that even those who seem to have everything can still fight battles within, and that vulnerability is not weakness but strength in its purest form. Because in a world obsessed with perfection, he chose authenticity. And that choice alone makes his story not just inspiring but deeply relatable, because we all have moments where we feel like we failed, like we've lost our way, like the world is moving forward while we're standing still. But his journey reminds us that setbacks are not the end. They are the setup for a stronger comeback, that every rejection carries a lesson. Every failure holds a hidden opportunity, and every struggle is shaping you into someone stronger than you were before. So if you ever find yourself doubting your path, remember this story. Remember that even someone who reached the highest peaks had to climb out of the deepest valleys. That success is not reserved for the perfect, but for the persistent, for those who refuse to give up even when everything tells them to. And maybe that's the real legacy of Ben Affleck, not just the films, not just the awards, but the reminder that no matter where you start, no matter how many times you fall, you always have the power to rise again, to rewrite your story, and to become the person you were always meant to be. There comes a moment in every person's life when the world seems to quietly step back and watch to see whether you will rise or disappear, whether you will fight or surrender. And for Ben Affleck, that moment didn't come once. It came again and again, each time heavier than before, each time louder with doubt. Because after the early triumph of Good Will Hunting, after the applause and validation that so many dream of, reality struck in a way few are prepared for, as success quickly turned into pressure, and pressure turned into expectation, and expectation into criticism, and suddenly every move he made was no longer just a choice but a headline. Every film scrutinized, every performance dissected, every failure amplified across the world. And in that storm, he faced something far more dangerous than failure itself, the loss of identity. Because when the world tells you who you are long enough, you begin to forget who you were meant to be. And this is where many stories end, quietly, painfully, fading into the background of what could have been. But his story refused to end there. Because deep inside him was something stronger than fear, stronger than doubt, something that refused to let him disappear. And that something was the belief that he could still become more, that his story was not finished yet. And so, instead of chasing validation, he made a decision that would change everything. He chose growth over comfort. He chose risk over safety. He chose to step away from the image the world had created for him and rebuild himself from the ground up. And that decision led him into one of the most powerful transformations of his career. Stepping behind the camera, not just as an actor, but as a director, a storyteller with a vision. Someone ready to prove that he was more than what critics believed. And with films like The Town and the globally acclaimed Argo, he didn't just regain respect, he redefined his entire legacy, showing that sometimes the greatest comeback is not returning to where you were, but becoming something entirely new, something stronger, something undeniable. And yet, even as his career found new life, the personal battles did not simply disappear, because success does not erase struggle and behind the scenes. He faced challenges that no award could fix, moments of vulnerability, addiction, and self-doubt that tested him in ways no audience could see. And what makes his journey truly powerful is not that he avoided these struggles, but that he confronted them openly, honestly, refusing to hide behind fame or pretend to be perfect, and in doing so, he gave the world something rare: authenticity. A reminder that even those who seem strong can feel broken, that even those who succeed can still struggle. And that true strength lies not in hiding your battles, but in facing them head on. And through that honesty, he became more than just an actor or a filmmaker. He became a symbol of resilience, a living proof that no matter how far you fall, you can still rise, that no matter how lost you feel, you can still find your way. And perhaps the most inspiring part of his journey is not the awards or the recognition, but the fact that he never stopped evolving, never stopped learning, never allowed himself to be defined by a single moment, whether it was success or failure, because life is not about one chapter. It is about the entire story, the highs and the lows, the victories and the setbacks, the moments of doubt and the moments of clarity, all coming together to shape who you become. And if there is one lesson his journey teaches, it is this: your past does not define your future. Your failures do not limit your potential, and your struggles do not determine your worth, because as long as you are willing to keep going, to keep fighting, to keep believing in yourself even when the world doesn't, you have the power to rewrite your story, just like he did, turning pain into purpose, setbacks into comebacks, and doubt into determination. And in a world that often celebrates perfection, his story stands as a powerful reminder that imperfection is where true growth begins, that the cracks in your journey are not weaknesses, but the places where your strength is forged, and that sometimes the greatest success is not what you achieve, but who you become in the process of achieving it. There is a quiet truth about life that most people only discover after they've been tested, after they've faced moments so heavy they feel impossible to carry. And that truth is this: success is never about how high you rise when everything is easy. It is about how you rebuild when everything falls apart. And for Ben Affleck, that rebuilding became the defining rhythm of his life. A cycle of falling, learning, rising, and transforming. Because just when the world thought it had him figured out, just when it labeled him as either a rising star or a fading one, he did something unexpected. He changed again, not for approval, not for applause, but for himself. And that is where true power begins. Because the moment you stop living for the expectations of others and start living for your own growth, everything shifts, and in his case,